Welcome to WhiteBaseTCG. Welcome back to WhiteBaseTCG. This is the Captain, and today we're going to talk about one of the main issues affecting the playability of the Gundam TCG, the proliferation of the colour white. This can be described as many factors, as it has the best draw power in the game, not enough counters for the blockers, and just the proliferation of blockers in general. This video was actually just me complaining about Wing, Green, White, Wing, as it is the main deck that dominated the first format of Gundam TCG, with the only counter being Zeon Rush. And with Set 2 coming out, the improvements have not come far enough, and there has been no variation on the meta, barring more colours using white. This is very destabilising for the game, as Bandai will probably want each colour to be represented naturally, but it gets to the point where you just lock everything down. So let's start with point 1, the best draw power in the game, and that is Overflowing Affection, which is a 2-cost, level 2 1-cost card that on play draws 2, discard 1. This is disgusting, and most likely going to be the first card that's going to be banned. As just a simple effect, draw 2, discard 1 at such early games, and without other colours gaining that control draw aspect, you just have to run it just for that consistency boost, especially because it's a best of 1 game. If this was a best of 3 game with a sideboard, then you could adjust for each variation, but as it stands now, Overflection is doing too much good work. There are other 2 cards that I would want to talk about in this point, which would be a Soul Resolve and a New Sign. Both of these cards are far more adjusted for how the Gundam TCG should be played, as they are both level 4 cost 3 effects. With Soul Resolve, it's just plain draw 2, and for a New Hope, it's draw 3, discard 2. Basically on the same rate and power level as Overflowing Affection, but coming a lot later in the turn, meaning that a rush board can be able to deal you down. For a mid-range board, it would be able to set up some of their pieces, like Kashdira for example. But this is not all, as Overflowing Affection just allows it to snowball into its second problem. There's not enough blockers, just white blockers in general. So let's break down the stats of blockers. With red and green, they have 0 blockers. They are the rush colours, which is fine, but I would like a 2-2 blocker. For red and green, there are 0 blockers each. This shows that they are the aggro colours of the format. And then there are 3 blue blockers total. Simple, effective. It's had 2 sets of support. Both of these are quite high, so you are able to get rushed quickly. For purple, there are 2 purple blockers, both of which are level 4 and level 5. This means that a rush deck is able to start, and then you deploy the blocker to stabilise. The problem is when you have 13 blockers, and this is without cards like Striker Pack and Yugi Kala that just make stuff blockers. This means that because of how the game is structured with best of 1 format, people want to be playing blockers. The main offender of this is Gundam Lilith. With the 2 full stat line, it makes it very hard to deal with, especially in the early game, as the main removal spell, Close Combat, only deals half of the total damage involved. And it gets to the point where you can start building up blockers, and then you can swing with them when your opponent is not attacking. This is the main problem, is caused by the lack of haste in the format. You can only gain like haste type effects when you link it up with a pilot, but the problem is that dilutes how many cards are in your deck. So therefore you end up in this weird situation where you can deploy a block, and then your next turn you can attack, swing in with the blocker, destroying your base, and therefore you can have free line to get through. The fact that the card blocker is so powerful and so versatile means that white is very good, especially when you give them effects. The main offender of the effects would be cards like Perfect Strike Gundam and Eyeless Gundam, 2 like 5-drops and 4-drops. The Perfect Strike is a 5-drop free cast, choose 1 enemy with 1 unit or less, bounce it back to your hand. The second, with Eyeless, when linked with a level 4 or higher pilot, choose 1 enemy unit with 4 or less, return it to your hand. this just slows them. Two cards are shown to have a really nasty effect on the game because mobility and haste is only allowed with a pilot. So you can just pair him up, bounce back an enemy unit, and it takes 2 turns of tempo, giving you so much value. But even then, a blocker can just give you 2 more turns of tempo pushing through. So what can be done about this? The player base have taken advantage of this by creating a counter deck to it. Xeon Rush, that plays an extortionate amount of low level 2 to level 4s, all with 1 to 2 cost, so you're basically every single turn you are playing your hand equal to the amount of cards you have in the value. And with cards like a Mono Ray, you're able to get past them. But the downside to this is that if you are not able to, if you draw bad, because blue-green doesn't have enough draw power, you will end up in a position where the white player can just, oh, I have enough blockers to make my deck consistency push through. And then they just play blocker after blocker, shutting down the entire game. The only card that's able to get through it is Gundam with Breach 2, which is quite bad because it's just you have to deal damage to a base, so you're dealing 2 damage to a base after you destroy it, and it has to be destroyed. And such as the Gundam Lilith example, it can still survive a turn of attack. This means you have to wait until late game to deploy your bigger Gundams. But guess which game plan wants that most? Control. So therefore you get into a bad position. The only way to do this is to add more first strike units in the game, so when you give the blocker units a counteractive. There are so many counters, but not enough at the same time. First strikes and high maneuvers are only limited to red-green, but because of how the format is and how they stack the cards, that you end up into a position where you can push through. The final thing is the command package. 2 commands in particular. Mugen the Flag and an unforeseen incident. This basically plays into the blocker advantage because they are. So let's start with Hawk of Adenian / Mugen the Flag. Main action, choose 1 enemy or 3 left view AC, return it to hand. Like discussed before, bouncing stuff to hand is 2 turn clock and it gets you effectively. So if they attack with something 3 or less, you can just bounce it. But if you have unforeseen incident, you get to choose 1 enemy unit and it gains -3 attack. This basically means that you can attack, you send in a blocker, you don't want the blocker to die, unforeseen incident to keep it alive, next turn counter attack. So this just leads to like the big cards, big style of gameplay where you snowball as much as possible, try to snowball as early as possible or stagnate to the late game and then push through with your bigger Gundams. This is not healthy at all, so I would like to see better removal options for blockers in particular, and more breach cards as they are the counter. Thank you for going through these musings. This is the captain from WhiteBaseTCG. Put your thoughts below to see if this is completely wrong, and I'll see you later. Like and subscribe. I'll see you later. Thank you. Bye.